Hey guys, thanks for tuning back into the channel. I'm the Arkansas RC Newbie, and on today's episode, I'm super excited to bring to you guys the all-new newbie scoring system. That's right, we are going to be coming up with a newbie score for all the crawlers, the bashers, everything on this channel from here on out. And what better vehicle to get started out with? The crawler, the Redcat Generation 7 Sport. So if you guys are interested in hearing the newbie score, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let's get into it. Guys, before we get into the newbie score of all of these different categories, we're going to be explaining them as we go. I want to let everybody know, if you guys remember, the Redcat Generation was a gift to me, bought brand new, and I got some driving in with it beforehand, and then I started reviewing this thing and we started looking into the manual, and apparently all of the linkage positions are wrong, or most of them are. So what we did was we changed out all the linkage positions, we did a video on it, and then we got some driving in afterwards, and it made for a whole new experience. So we made sure that the scores reflected that. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and get into the first category. It's going to be the tires and wheels. Now these tires are definitely hurting a little bit. They are not crawler tires, and I think a lot of that is due to just the real tough compound of the Interco tire design. It doesn't feel the softest in the world. You know, you probably could get a little bit more traction out of them the longer you kind of play and bash with this thing, but definitely out of the box it's not the greatest, and part of that is due to the really firm foam that Redcat sends with them. So maybe if you went with a softer foam and really wore in these tires, you might be able to get some decent grip out of them, but wet they are very bad. Okay, at least on the Arkansas rocks. Let's go and talk about the wheels. These are actual beadlock wheels. That was one of the most exciting things, and I think one of the biggest money savers when it comes to this crawler, to have actual beadlocks to where the rubber tires are not just glued onto a generic wheel. Now, they're definitely not heavy. They are plastic, but there is some pretty good detail there, and they're actually vented, so whenever you go to squeeze that tire, you can actually hear some air escaping. The tires and wheels, guys, that whole combo got a newbie score of 1.83 points. And on today's episode, the Redcat will have a overall, a chance for an overall perfect score of 15 points total. So make sure you guys stay tuned. Let's see where that newbie score gets us. All right, let's go and move on to the next category. It's going to be electronics. Now, the Redcat comes with a waterproof ESC. It does have a jumper on there to run between a 9 or, from my understanding, a 2 to 3S LiPo. Redcat comes with a 9 It takes about 4.5 hours to charge, so that was a downside. But the ESC doesn't overheat. The brushed motor, a 17-turn 550 can. The whole ESC combo does pretty well, really, and it's definitely punchy enough. The downside to the electronics with the Redcat is definitely going to be the transmitter. I believe the receiver has 3 channels, and the open channel that you have, where you have your accessory channel there, is always on. The transmitter does not have any type of switch, toggle, any knobs, nothing to control that 3rd channel, which I thought was a bummer. So the transmitter is definitely the worst part of the electronics when it comes to that. You can tune in things like your steering trim and your throttle trim. Other than that, it's pretty simple and pretty cheap feeling. So the electronics has a newbie score of 2.0 points. Alright, now let's go ahead and talk about one of the most important categories is going to be the ground clearance. Okay, you know, really the plastic on these axles, I've been looking at getting some portal axles. Again, everything on this vehicle is stock at this point, but we are looking to do some upgrades now. We want to get this video out. I was wanting to get some new axles, but every time I take this thing out, it seems like I just slide over rocks, and the ground clearance doesn't look like it's going to be the greatest, both on the front and rear, but guys, it kind of works. That with the whole pinion tooth and the motor setup that they gave you here, you definitely have enough go to get out of sticky situations, and that's what's kind of weird about this crawler. It's more of a basher, I would say, than a crawler, but we're going to be trying to make it a competitive crawler, I'm sure, on the channel. But the front and rear ground clearance is decent. And really a big part of that is just due to the plastic that they chose to use, when the middle of the chassis is amazing. I mean, there's a whole bunch of ground clearance. They've done a great job with the chassis design, the frame rails. That gets a newbie score, a ground clearance newbie score of 3.50 points. Let's go ahead and talk about the steering with this Redcat. Guys, this has got to be some of the worst steering I have ever seen. This thing will not churn at all. The speed is terrible. The torque is, I guess, a little better than the speed, but it's still pretty bad, especially when you get in between some rocks. I mean, if you're turning in sand, you're okay. If you're turning on cement, you'll be fine, but as soon as you put this thing on a course, it falls flat on its face. The turning radius is pretty bad, and I know there's some options where you guys can actually like shave down your knuckles and things like that to get a little bit more turning radius. I actually just changed the point on my my servo horn, and that seemed to help out, and I still wasn't limiting out the knuckles and the whole radius, so there might be something there, but again, we might be looking at some new axles with this thing. It looks like I'm going to have to get an external BEC and maybe just a whole nother servo completely to kind of get this thing set up, at least in the turning department like I want. But that's going to bring the newbie score on the steering. It's a newbie score of 1.91 points. Okay, now let's go ahead and start talking about the suspension. Now, this is something that's super interesting because earlier in the video I'd stated, hey, we did some changes to this thing like it's supposed to be. In the beginning, the Redcat, it was even fighting against the drive line, or your drive shaft. Your drive shaft in the rear was hitting itself, so you're unable to get like full articulation. But after fixing that, changing some of the mounting points, the suspension's good. The articulation, the travel, the responsiveness, all that is excellent. The suspension is going to get a newbie score of 2.33 points. It does suck that you have to go through and fix all of this stuff, but it's all there. You know what I mean? Like, it's completely free. It just takes a little bit of time. But time is money. So those 5 categories have a 0 to 5. The fun factor gets a 0 to 10, anywhere in between there. So this one really is the Mac Daddy of them all. This has to do with the replayness, I guess. The want to get this thing and play with it over and over and over again. As is, out of the box, not the greatest. Once you do the proper linkage positions, change up the shocks, you know, do a few things here and there, it definitely becomes way more wanting to play with it again. The fun factor goes up. But I actually had a fail and it messed my fun factor up, guys. I had a knuckle break on the course. Luckily, I was just messing around with this thing, so it's not my comp rig, but it broke on me, and the knuckle just completely split. So I will be have to get some aluminum knuckles. That messed up the fun factor, and really, I think the fun factor would be a little bit higher of a score. We're fixing to get to the newbie score, so just hang in there. I think it would be a lot higher if this thing had a way that I could actually program the ESC to lower speed control, because this thing is from 0 to 60 real quick. It's way more of a basher. It had been more geared towards a crawler or just going slow with the whole 4-wheel drive style, it would have gotten a higher fun factor. But the newbie score out of 10 is a 5, right in the middle. Okay, so guys, that brings the Redcat Generation 7 Sport with a first ever overall newbie score of 7.31 points out of 15 when it comes to this particular model. Definitely not a bad crawler. I think this is for the beginner enthusiast, beginner hobbyist that wants to kind of dip his toe in but not jump full in. It looks like you definitely need to sink some money in this thing to make it better, but that's all part of this hobby. I know I have to get some aluminum knuckles now, and we got some other stuff already ordered, and I got some stuff sitting in a box that I've been waiting to throw on this guy. So guys, man, as always, I appreciate you watching the channel. Please like, please subscribe if you ain't a part of the channel. Become a part of the channel. And let me know in the comments. Do you guys agree with this? Do you disagree? Check out the other subcategories in the description below. Also for some affiliate links. And all you fans out there, this is the Arkansas RC Newbie. And I will see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for watching, guys.